The Ink Black Heart is J.K. Rowling's latest novel, written under the name Robert Galbraith. It's the sixth book in her Strike series about a modern-day London-based detective agency, and it was published just over a week ago. The main case the agency takes on in this story involves a YouTube cartoon called The Ink Black Heart, with a toxic fandom that includes both social justice advocates and alt-right edgelords. I'm a fan of the series, and I particularly enjoyed the previous instalment, Troubled Blood, so I eagerly devoured The Ink Black Heart upon its release. Having now finished it, I'd like to share with you a list that I diligently kept while I was reading, listing all the references J.K. Rowling makes to real-life internet culture in this book. Stans, Tumblr, Spoonies, Otherkin, SJWs, or social justice warriors, the term red-pilled, pickup artists, digital game, chads, Stacys, normies, alpha male, beta male, thought, foid, or femoid, Elliot Rodger, Jared Taylor, white replacement, 14 words, 88, the invasion of Europe, the murder of Lee Rigby, the Charlie Hebdo massacre, UKIP, the Anders Breivik massacre, Norse religion and symbology, Julius Evola and Ride the Tiger, Reddit, Bitcoin, Dark Web, 4chan, and Club Penguin. Most of these references are found by the detectives as they pore through Twitter trying to identify a troll who may or may not have murdered the animators of the eponymous cartoon. These tweets are printed out in full and make up a substantial portion of the hefty page count which many of the book critics have pointed out. Some critics are saying that Rowling has written this book about herself and about how she was hounded by Twitter mobs and obsessive fans over the years since she's been releasing Harry Potter books and Robert Galbraith novels. That's certainly an understandable interpretation, although J.K. Rowling denies it outright, but the resemblance to reality goes much deeper than just her personal experience of being the target of cancel culture. She seems to have done a lot of research for this novel, and the way that she managed to portray these Twitter conversations and private group chats in the between the mods of a video game, it all comes across as surprisingly believable. And I'm saying that speaking as someone who's spent a lot of time online in the past 10, 15 years since I was able to use a computer on my own. I've been on the internet. And as you may know, if you follow me on Twitter or if you watch me a lot on YouTube, I'm sort of deeply entrenched in right-wing online communities, not just as a creator, but also as an observer in many other wide-ranging sub-communities of right-wing political discourse. I'm the same age as a lot of the characters in this novel who are related to this cybercrime investigation, and a lot of their experiences that they describe ring very true for me. The fictitious cartoon featured in the story reminds me of the Newground shows that were popular when I was a teenager. The Ink Black Heart, which is the name of the cartoon and of the novel about the cartoon, it's described as being weird and creepy and dark and funny in a way that made me imagine it was kind of like Salad Fingers, but with a heavy goth aesthetic and a kind of slightly more Tumblr sense of humour. Overall, I was just really impressed with how well J.K. Rowling, who's a 50-year-old woman who I take it doesn't spend much time shitposting on Twitter, she managed to integrate into the story a believable world of real internet subcultures and fandoms. And obviously she portrayed right-wing Twitter users as hateful and violent and anti-Semitic and crass and misogynistic, but there are really some accounts like that, I can say for sure after spending a lot of time on Twitter. And she just takes it a few steps further. So in the book, there's a secret society of these right-wing Twitter trolls who are, they're a proper organized group with goals and leadership, and they actually commit terror attacks on victims that they select. But in real life, we know that right-wing nut jobs are usually not organised, and when they tend to be just sort of lone actors who get hold of guns or bombs or they select their own targets and do their best on basically acting alone, which is really nothing like what is portrayed in the book as a kind of highly organized terrorist group. So many of these references to right-wing online culture were so uncannily familiar that I started to wonder if she, in the course of her research for this book, may have stumbled upon some of my own tweets or the tweets of my friends. The hardest part to believe was that these violent neo-Nazi online edgelords would be part of a fandom for a cartoon that's sort of made for teenage goths and Tumblr fairies, but now that I think about it, that's not completely unprecedented. And for all the evil right-wing trolls in the novel, there's an equal number of what we in 2022 call woke scolds or cancel culture mobs or witch hunts, but the book is set in 2015, so they're called SJWs. These mobs of politically correct browbeaters are portrayed as just as vicious in their trolling of the murder victim as the alt-right trolls are, but they aren't violent at all. There is no Antifa mentioned in the book, and there's no left-wing terror attacks or largely peaceful protests. Depending on who you talk to, J.K. Rowling is often described as an SJW feminist author who writes the worst books ever to scourge the face of the earth, or she's a right-wing hateful TERF who will not rest until she's seen every trans person on the face of the earth murdered. But for me, Rowling has always been just a quite good author. And although this book was kind of lacking in its core story, like the core mystery was a little bit unsatisfying for me, not quite as good as Troubled Blood in my opinion in all round in every aspect, but I was very impressed with just how well she integrated internet culture into this book. As well as my experience on YouTube and Twitter, I spent a number of years on Tumblr, and I even was on Club Penguin once or twice in my day. I've been a moderator on YouTube channels. I've been in group chats online with people whose faces I've never seen, whose names I don't know, and yet I've come to think of some of these people who I've never met as my real friends, in just the same way that this private video game mod community in the novel are a very close-knit group of people who do not know each other's real identities and they don't use their real names. There's an intense sort of fight for power in this group of people who are doing all this work for a fan community for no pay. They're just there for the love of this art and for this community that they've helped to create, and they get tangled in these toxic relationships between each other as they vie to be like the most important member of this community in a way that I've seen in real life. Getting a window into their group conversations as well as their private channels that they have with each other comes up with this beautiful like tableau of backstabbing and hidden identities and secrecy and deception that's all very intriguing and keeps you turning the pages. But then there's also murder getting wrapped up in this, and they suspect that the murderer is among them, and they don't know who it is. They're all trying to figure it out. It was a very ambitious subject matter for Rowling to take on, and I'm impressed that she pulled it off as well as she did, even if it wasn't the best thing she's ever written. But honestly, who cares about my opinion about a J.K. Rowling novel? Like, most of you are probably just here so that I can tell you how cringy it was and it was bad and you don't have to read it. But it wasn't bad. You probably don't need to read it though, to be honest. If you're not a fan of the series already, I wouldn't recommend it, and if you are a fan of the series, you're probably going to read it no matter what I say, so enjoy. If you are going to read it, don't get the audiobook. That was the mistake I made. All of the tweets and the online channels, it makes it quite difficult to follow with the narrator just reading out a series of hashtags and at this user, at that user, replying to this user and the date and the time, and it's all like really not conducive to an audiobook. While writing the script for this video, I found an interview with J.K. Rowling where she says that she got the idea for this when her children told her that there was a cartoon with an extremely toxic internet fandom.
What happened was I had this idea for the plot, so it was about 3 years ago now, and I said to my 2 teenagers, who do you think is the most toxic fandom? And to my amazement, they mentioned a certain cartoon, which I'd seen and thought was very witty and funny. I can't say what the cartoon is.
Let's press on quickly and you tell me.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, what, that cartoon? Are you serious? And then I went online and looked and I thought, oh, they're absolutely right. So that's why it's an animator in the book. Originally, I thought I might make it a comic strip writer, but it's an animator in homage to this particularly toxic fandom.
I speculate that it's perhaps Rick and Morty who has that cartoon has a notoriously awful fandom online. And that made me think of a song that one of the creators of Rick and Morty, Dan Harmon, made. He wrote this little song as a gift to his co-creator of Rick and Morty, Justin Roiland. And I'll just finish this video by playing it for you. It's probably going to get a copyright strike, but it's such a beautiful, cute little song that I thought I'd finish with that. And the song is about what it's like being the creator of a much loved and much reviled property on Twitter. So enjoy. Remember to watch Women's Hour Fridays at 9 p.m. and I'll see you again soon.
Justin Roiland, you were just a boy when we met, and I will bet you're feeling older today. You do the voices and you make creative choices that bring millions of us joy, and so the world would like to say, happy birthday, you're the best, last season sucked, give me a job, I hope you die, just take my money, take your time and make me more. Happy birthday, you're a monster, you're a god, you're nothing special, never change, you changed my life, now where the fuck is season 4?